This is the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast. This is the show for recruiters, founders, and everyone in between who wants to get 1% better every single day. One conversation at a time. We cover business development, mindset, and performance with some of the best people in the recruitment industry. Follow the show so that you never miss an episode and share it with someone who wants to get 1% better. Now let's get into today's episode. Rich, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I have to say, just from the start, I apologise the first time I had to cancel because I remember waking up in the morning after being up all night with a baby with the worst migraine, and I think I caught you just as you were leaving the house or something. But I'm glad that you made it here, and I'm excited to get into this one, mate. So, for people that may or may not know you, your background, what you do, just give people a bit of an intro.
Hi, my name's Richard Caldecott. I was former IT director of Henderson Scott. For those of you that know, we were a very successful recruitment business focusing sort of tech, security, commercial roles. At the end of August 2019, we were acquired by a larger recruitment business, and I was quite fortunate because where you would normally see the smaller business, the operational functions tends to diminish. I was quite fortunate. I ended up with more of a group role, so I was suddenly working from a 100-person business to a 600-person business. So I was then enlightened to what a bigger business does. That was going really well, but I always had this niggle, this thing. I wanted to share some of the success we had with our tech stack and our cloud first. I mean, we're going back a few years, but having a cloud first approach in a smaller business back then was almost unheard of. But I always had this niggle that I wanted to share some of the success that we had using technology at Henderson Scott with other recruitment businesses. So at the end of 2023, I left Henderson Scott and went and set up Caldicott Consulting to help businesses. You might have a IT function already within the business. You might have like an outsourced MSP. Quite often they are support based, break fix, that kind of thing. Whereas what I'm trying to do is I can work with that existing IT function, or I can be your IT function. They quite often don't have that recruitment business knowledge. They might be fantastic IT people, but they might not necessarily understand the business, and that's what I try and bring. My USP to the world is my IT director brain, but also this weird obsession I have with recruitment technology and helping people become successful by using that technology in the best way. Yeah,
nice. Well, look, there's going to be loads that we're going to get into. As I said before we started recording, I've spoken to quite a few people on the podcast around, we're going through this big AI boom at the moment. There's a lot of businesses that are developing AI strategies for the first time and looking at their tech stack. And I spoke to Kalpesh about this yesterday, that there's a lot of businesses that kind of go overboard with the tech. And I know one of the things we're going to dive into is that, part of what you do essentially is going into a business, looking at the tech stack and figuring out what you're actually doing with it. And I think a really interesting thing as well is having that IT systems brain and the sort of coaching, training brain conjoined together to be like, how do we actually utilize both these types of people to help you upskill on the tech, but also upskill on the human side as well. I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation. First and foremost, then, so talk to me a little bit about when you go into, since you've been consulting or when you've worked at recruitment businesses yourself, talk us through kind of what the situation is when you go in there and they've got like a big tech stack, they're not utilizing it. Kind of what's the process that you kind of follow to help them, I guess, utilize it if they've got stuff and perhaps they're not?
I think it's always really important, and I always make a joke about this, is recruitment leaders and recruiters are inherently distrusting of weird IT people like myself, and I think it's really important to break down that barrier. So whenever I first go into a business, we start with the people first. It's really important that you meet those key stakeholders at all different levels, not just, a lot of businesses will focus on perhaps the senior leadership team and really get the understanding of what's going on in their worlds, but not necessarily work on the floor. I like going to stick myself right in the middle of the sales floor and listen to what they're saying, and not necessarily answer questions early on, but just to listen to what they're doing, what they're saying. And more often than not, is they don't know what they don't know. So you could see them doing something that takes them 20, 30 minutes to produce, and you go, well, you do realise if you did it this way, I can save you 10 minutes of that process. And if you've got 30, 40, 50 people within the recruitment business, that all adds up very quickly, and suddenly you've saved a person a whole day's worth of work over the course of a month, and they can focus on selling and doing what they do best as recruiters, rather than dealing with, more often than not, a piece of laborious admin work. And then from there, we'll then look at, the technology. How is it configured? Is it integrated? You'll be surprised at how many of these platforms and businesses that I go into have the ability to integrate lots of different, all of their systems together, but for whatever reason they haven't done it. It could be that they didn't know. It could be that they bought the product and then the integration has then come later, and then they haven't then found out that it's happened. Or there's this fear of integrating because, if it's not right up there, then further down the chain they can have a knock-on effect. So it's you've got that education piece that comes in as well, getting them to trust themselves with this technology, as well as educating them on how to use it as well as possible.
Yeah. So what you just said there that really stuck out for me, thinking back to when I was a recruiter, and we spoke about this before we recorded, that sometimes a bit of tech will be rolled out and we don't really have training on it, so we don't really utilise it. Then the managing director's like, why aren't you using this platform? Like, we don't really know how to use it. And notoriously for a recruiter, if there's more than 2 clicks, they're just not going to do it. It's something that we've gone through when we're developing our own product. But the key thing for a recruiter, and this is what I loved about Sourcewell, right, is that their whole thing is taking the admin away from a recruiter, right? And there's a lot more platforms out there that are using AI automation to remove the tasks that are laborious and long and admin-y stuff that just allows recruiters to just be on the phone more. When you're going into businesses, and you mentioned there's like some specific tech or IT systems that people are using that can save them time, can you kind of expand on like what those are?
Hey guys, quick one before we jump back into the episode. If you are a recruiter who feels like half your week disappears into admin, follow-ups, data cleaning, and jumping between several different tools, then listen up, because this episode is officially sponsored by Sourcewell. Sourcewell is the recruitment productivity platform, and I don't just mean another tool that you'll forget to use. I mean the tool that actually gives you your time back. You can run your entire desk in one place. Outreach, sourcing, data enrichment, multi-step email and LinkedIn sequences, inbox management, and even call notes. It's all there, synced, automated, and according to their stats, recruiters using Sourcewell see 56% higher response rates, double the pipeline, and approximately save around 8 hours of admin every single week. If you're like me, admin as a recruiter is the devil, and this productivity platform really helps you save a load of time. So reach out to Sourcewell, go to sourcewell.com. It's a fantastic platform. I've used it myself. I really believe in it, and I'm super grateful for them sponsoring the podcast. Let's get back into the episode.
The big one, I think, is booking interviews. We don't really like doing it. A lot of businesses, you have different pockets of people doing it in slightly different ways. Some people do it from within their systems. Some people do it within their outlooks. Some even just chuck out a WhatsApp message and go, there you go. I think it's really important to have a bit of consistency there. If you can bring in a product or a process that simplifies that entire process, but also ensures that all that information goes into the system as well, that's when you're saving time. Not just immediately in that moment when you're booking that thing, that's relatively short, but further down the line, if there's a change, if we have to reschedule, how do you get back to that information to then edit it, update it? Is the location changed? That kind of thing. It's making that as efficient as you can.
Yeah. What are the things then from your perspective? So if let's put myself into the shoes of a founder, right? So whether it is someone that's just set up and they're looking to hire their first few, first cohort of staff, or maybe I'm a business that's at 50 heads and I want to expand to 100 heads, and I'm a bit IT illiterate, right? And my processes and my systems are a bit out of whack. Maybe they come to me to go, right, let's upskill the staff, etc. But the IT processes and stuff are a bit of a mess. What advice have you got for a founder when it comes to, when they are in that situation where they're like, right, I need to really just make sure that, the IT side of things, my systems, my tech stack is looking good? Like, what's your sort of advice for those people?
I really like mapping out processes and really understanding how they're doing how they're, going about their day. Quite often I'll go into a business and the message that the management has is very different to what's what's on the floor. So management might think that the process is super slick and they don't understand why people aren't following it. And then you get on the floor and you find it's 25 clicks to do something really small, or the ordering of the fields doesn't necessarily make sense because it follows a legacy process, that kind of thing. I mean, one thing I do say to everyone is, don't be afraid to change the direction of the ship, which sounds quite extreme, but also don't be afraid to revise what you've worked. Don't be afraid to mark your own homework. If you feel something is good, double check it. Have a conversation. It's the guy on the floor who's doing the job day in and day out. Is he as happy with that system and that process as the person that perhaps introduced it, or the person that set it maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago? Don't be afraid to just continually revise and change it. You might find actually you've nailed it and everything's really good, and you might only need a couple of tweaks. But more often than not, with the way our worlds are changing so fast and technology changes so quickly, more often than not, you will have to make some small adjustments, even if it is just moving that field from the bottom of the page to the top.
If you've made it this far into the episode, do everybody a favour and just like or favourite this particular episode. Make sure you're following, make sure you're subscribing, whatever platform it is. And if you're not going to do it for me or because of the love of the show, do it for Marshall, the star of the show. Do it for Marshall, because if you don't like this, if you don't follow it, if you don't upvote it or subscribe, Marshall's going to be really upset, and no one wants to see Marshall upset. So do everyone a favour and like, follow, subscribe, whatever platform it is, and Marshall will be happy. Anyway, let's get back into this episode, shall we?
Yeah, 100%. What would you say is like, there's like war stories and like horror stories of like when you go into a recruitment business, like the amount of times I've gone to go and meet a customer and, I sit there, and one of my things is back from when I was a consultant is asking the client, like, what's the business objectives? Like what are your personal goals with the business? And a lot of recruitment founders, as you know, want to sell, in 5 years I want to sell. And I'm like, cool. And I remember one client, obviously I won't name drop them, but I sat down with them and all the founders. I was like, cool, so what have you done? Like, what have you systemized? What process have you got nailed that's going to allow you to be in a situation in front of someone to buy your business? Like, what have you put down? And they looked at me and went, sorry, what do you mean? And I was like, no, in terms of like, have you documented your processes? Have you, is your CRM clean? Have you got contractors? Have you got RPOs, retainers? Like, what have you done? And they kind of looked at each other and went, we haven't done any of them. And I went, okay, so just putting my like sort of coach hat on here. If you want to sell your business in 5 years, you have to reverse engineer that. So what steps have you done to do that? And they just looked at each other and went, we haven't. And I was like, okay, so that's like me saying I want to put on 15 kilos of muscle mass, but I'm not going to track my protein. I'm not going to eat loads of food. I'm not going to go to the gym and lift weights. It doesn't make any sense. I was like, is that actually a real goal? And they went, well, yeah, that's why we set up the business. I was like, yeah, everyone sets up a recruitment business to sell, but like, have you actually put anything in place to do that? And they're like, no. And I'm just thinking like, oh my God. So have you kind of gone into businesses, whether it's consulting or worked at companies before, where you've just walked in and it's just an absolute mess?
Yes. Yes. And you have to be quite tactful in your approach. Facial expressions, it's very difficult to walk into place and, not show it on your face that they're in a bit of trouble here. So I'll try and sit down and, almost ask them questions. Tell me how you do this. Yeah. Tell me why this is set up that way. And it's not necessarily, because there could be a reason why, there could be an understanding. Sometimes there is. Sometimes, our biggest client at the time insisted that we did things in this particular way, and it just became the norm for the rest of the business. So now he's like, okay, well, let's undo some of that. If you don't have that client anymore, or that process doesn't need to be there, let's get it out and find something better to go in there. But on the flip side, I've gone into businesses and I've gone, well, why do you need me? And then you find out actually they want, they feel that they've got their processes nailed or their systems nailed, but they need that little bit more. They want, they want their average recruiters to be gold stars, and they want their gold stars to be platinum, and and it's marginal gains and pushing, wanting that next level, wanting to succeed a little bit more. Yeah.
So okay, so let's put myself back in the shoes of a recruitment founder again then. So let's just say I've got 4 consultants in my permanent division. They're all billing 200k a year. They're hitting target every quarter, but I'm looking at them and I'm going, they could be doing more. They could be, they could be billing more. Like they're hitting target, but I just know there's more in them. And I haven't really mapped out my systems. And I'm speaking to you, and I'm like, what would your approach or advice be for a founder to help those? Because I know obviously from an L&D perspective, from a coaching perspective, like it's after a couple of phone calls, I can kind of spot gaps and go, well, look, you could get higher fees here, or you could get more out there. But from like a systems perspective, like what would you be able to do to, again, if I'm the founder here, to help my consultants do more from your perspective?
Like, I love simplification. I feel like simplification comes with better understanding, comes with less complexity, makes things more efficient. And if you can really narrow it down so you only have to do the fundamentals, the really important stuff, and then if you do need to grow it out, then as you say, reverse engineer it, build it out from there. If you need to add some more complexity, you need to add some more detail, then grow it out. But get those basics right first, because you'll find that once you've got the basics, that then frees up the consultants to do what they do best, to get on the phones or however they communicate, be more efficient in that respect. Perhaps look at some sort of automation or AI integrated tool to help them with their BD outreach. So then they can then focus on the selling, and you take away a lot of that back office stuff too.
What is your thoughts on the automation piece? Because I'm a bit mixed on it, where I think that there's certainly a place for it, but I've also seen agencies kind of go just full pelt automation, mass emails to all the clients in the database and stuff. And I can't remember who it was. I think it was Ollie Stockford that came on the podcast. His episode, the week we're recording this, 26th today, his episode came out 2 days ago. And he said, like, he's a £2 million biller, right? He does both. He was like, I do my automation and I do my hyper-personalised outreach. He's like, if you just do hyper-personalised outreach, which that's kind of me, right? I don't really do enough automation. So you're not getting to enough people. Because like the problem is some people do too much of the automation. And I don't know if you get this, but my LinkedIn inbox is just filled of you can just tell it's AI.
Yeah.
It's like that you can just tell that's not really, you haven't really personalized that. You've just used custom variables. And do you know what my biggest pet peeve is? AI voice notes.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know why it triggers me to high hell.
I mean, I struggle with voice notes as it is. Like,
Mate.
a message should be. I always feel a message should be private, and if I want to read that message, I'll read it. But I don't really want to hit play on the train and everyone hear what's going on with that message.
Well, if you've got headphones on, it's fine.
If you've got headphones,
but like if someone sends me a voice note, maybe this is just my own bias. If you send me a voice note and it's under a minute long, and I know on LinkedIn it's capped at a minute, and it's your voice, and you go, "Hey Charles, I saw your post. I saw you had Calpesh on the podcast. I know him well. I've got this company that I work with. They've mentioned your name. Like I think I might be able to help you. You're happy to jump on a call?" I would reply. I just would. But recently I've had a couple of voice notes which I can tell are AI, and they're like, "Charles, hi. I saw your post recently regarding so-and-so. I'd love to get on a call." And then it's 15 automated LinkedIn messages. And I'm just like, I was toying with the idea recently of creating a custom GIF to just send back to people, giving them a metaphorical middle finger, because it pisses me off. And mate, I think I've had 1, maybe 2 sales calls this year, and thousands of emails, thousands of in-mails and LinkedIn messages, and following this. It's so bait, my like youth term there. It's so bait now, where they like my post, then they comment with a question, because that's what personal branding gurus tell you to do. Then they send you an email, then, "Oh, just bumping this up so it doesn't get lost." Then the AI voice note, and I'm like, so I'm going on a bit of a rant there, but there's so much of that out there. But I'm curious from your perspective, because automation, there is a space for it. Personally, I think it's you've got to do it right. But from a systems perspective, IT perspective, like what's your opinion on it?
I mean, do you know what, automation that's done well can be the difference. It can save a business.
Yeah.
Because if you're a founder-led business and you've got a small team and you're already extremely busy, if you can give a lot of some of that laborious, the stuff that people really don't want to do, if you can give that to and automate that task, then absolutely brilliant. Because we said you can focus on something else. But I think a lot of it has to be everything in moderation, and you have to have some key foundations in place before you can do that. You all have to be on the same page with regards to the data that's going into your systems. If you've got 1 or 2 people within your business that are a bit lax in that department, and you attach an automation to that data, you're going to become exposed really quickly. Using your example about automated voice notes and messages, you can tell when people have used a template. Because I've had messages that almost came through on consecutively. Tuesday lunchtime seems to be really popular for messages that I get. I get a flurry of emails at Tuesday lunchtime, and you can tell they've all used the same bot because the message is identical. They've been that lazy that they haven't even changed the default template. Hi Rich, how are you? I can see you're doing really well at Caldicott. They've not even put my full business name. They just put. But yeah, that you can spot them a mile off, and I think people are becoming wise to it as well.
Big time.
So it's just be smart with it.
Yeah.
And seek advice.
Do you know what I noticed there? I don't know if this is LinkedIn or do you use Grammarly at all?
I don't.
So perfect for idiots like me who can barely spell, because when you do a post, it will just correct your grammar and the spelling and stuff. And I did a LinkedIn post, and what I've started to do now is I'll write my LinkedIn post out, like flesh it out, whack it into ChatGPT, and be like, right, I call it my copywriter compadre, and it says copywriter compadre activated. Here's how I would adjust your post. This is more for like thought-provoking, value-adding, or controversial, whatever. And then I'll read through it and I'll go, cool, I like that. I'm going to put that into LinkedIn and then just slightly edit it so it's not just to cut and paste, but it's still my idea. And then ChatGPT, because sometimes I'll write a post and it looks like a fucking essay, right? And I don't know whether it was Grammarly or LinkedIn, but the first paragraph said that this text looks like it is AI generated. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting, because like that was my text, but ChatGPT has kind of like edited it slightly. So I edited it again and the thing removed, and it was like, okay, cool. And again, you can do this with ChatGPT and I'm sure other generative AI platforms where you can feed it a bunch of your content and it will write like you, but it still does come across sometimes a bit AI. The reason why I'm mentioning that is that I've seen like a surge of LinkedIn posts and like we said, the outreach as well, where it's so clearly AI. And I don't know what your my favorite thing that I know it's AI now is that, but here's the thing.
But his
Because I feel like some people have got rid of that long dash that the ChatGPT.
The long dash.
People have now prompted ChatGPT to get rid of the long dash because people will clock. So you don't see that as much anymore. But it's the like a little thing like that, like so and so, but here's the thing, but how would we change this? And it's like it's so clearly AI, and it puts you off. And I think it removes your credibility.
With emojis as well. They always use the little rocket emoji.
Yeah, or the fire emoji.
Or the fire
emoji.
emoji.
Yeah, it's classic. It's classic.
Well, I mean, LinkedIn has their own sort of AI generated post builder now, don't they?
Yes.
So
yeah.
You can just tell it what you're feeling, and off it goes. Hit send, and you can forget about it. So I don't know what my views are on that. If you've got a content, a platform that's focused on individual content, marketing individuals, and then you put a little AI button on it, I almost feel that's a little bit counterproductive for the likes of LinkedIn, because it's not necessarily genuine content.
Yeah.
Then is it?
It's kind of bordering on a bit lazy as well, isn't it? Because like back in the day when I first got into like personal branding and stuff, and I was like one of the first people in the office to do like video content, like video adverts, and I had a bit of flair and personality, maybe a bit of humour and whatnot. Like if we did a video one week, which was like the 3 companies that have just acquired so and so, or launched a new product in the market, whatever. Like me and my marketing manager would sit down and spend, like we'd schedule 15, 20 minutes in the diary, do a bit of research. Like she would do the research initially, she was great. And she'd be like, right, here are the companies that have released products. How are we going to flesh out this video? Go to the whiteboard. Right, okay, first topic will be X, couple of phrases to use of Y. Second topic is, Z, And then we go, right, okay, cool. How are we going to do this? All right, sweet, let's do it. Record, done. Do the video, sweet. Upload. Now, like I can literally just go onto any generative AI platform and go, what 3 recruitment businesses have gone through PE or like, mergers acquisition? Cool. What should I say on this post? All right, what's my call to action? What's my hook? Sweet, done. There you go. It's like, okay, maybe look, if I put my devil's avocado hat on here, maybe that is being more productive and, you're utilising tools to speed up that process. But I said this to Calpesh yesterday. I was like, do you not think that AI is maybe making people not rely on their brain anymore?
I'm concerned about ownership. I'm concerned that you can schedule a whole load of AI generated posts before you leave the house in the morning, But what if a post goes out and it contains some information that you don't want it to, and you have, because you've been a bit lazy, you've not necessarily vetted that first, and then before you've finished your first cup of coffee, the whole world's blown up because you've posted something in a public forum that people disagree with, or object to, and then suddenly you're potentially liable for that. So I think let these things help you, definitely, but still retain that ownership. Still make sure that it's still you that's vetting what's going out. Don't just spin up. I'm going to do here's my social post for the next 20 weeks, 2 posts a week, make it sound like recruitment, off you go. Always bring. Do you know, my name is my business. You know, it's my name above the door. So everything I try to do comes from me. You know, you're buying rich at the end of the day, whether that devalues it, my proposition or not. But you're buying rich at the end of the day. So it's really important that the service that you get is from me, not from a tool that anyone could buy.
Yeah, 100%. Something I spoke to Caldecott about yesterday, and we kind of split it into two. I said, you know, because he obviously advises a lot of recruitment businesses, and I said, you know, if I was a startup, a founder, maybe I've got one consultant underneath me, and I wanted to get to 5 heads this year, versus a company that's at 10 to 50 that wants to get to 50 to 100 heads, etc. What's the sort of tech stack we're looking at there? And we had a bit of a back and forth about it, and the reality is that you don't technically need LinkedIn Recruiter, depending on your market. Some markets I think it's probably more needed, but you know, LinkedIn is free unless you get the Recruiter. Mobile phone contracts, sweet. CRM, kind of a given, right? Laptop, PC, Mac, whatever. That's kind of the bread and butter, right? But I know a lot of businesses now are looking to expand their tech stack, but I always say I'm not a tech expert, but just don't go wild with it. I've seen businesses spend that tens of thousands a month on the tech stack. They don't utilize it, or you know, it's not actually, you know, there's no genuine sort of return on investment, etc. So you know, when you go into businesses and you're looking at their tech stack, maybe you might be able to give a perspective on, here's what I've seen works in terms of this small tech stack or this broad tech stack. Here's what don't work. Here's some things that are some nice to haves, but not really that necessary. Again, you don't necessarily need to name drop specific tech if you don't want to, but you know, if you were advising a startup founder or a mid-level, small to medium-sized enterprise, like, when they're looking at their tech stack, what would you say are kind of the almost non-negotiables and some of the additional things that would really help, like the automation aspects or anything like that?
I think it's always important to start with familiarity. Typically, if you're going to spin up your own recruitment business, typically you would have had some experience in this space anyway. So the first hurdle is you're already learning how to be a business leader. Try not to make it even more complicated by buying a completely different piece of software or kit that you're not used to. So if you do have the opportunity to use a similar tool to what you've used to, that's going to help. Keep it simple. You don't have to buy everything. I found that there's 2 types of business leader that I work with. There's a business leader that goes out and buys absolutely everything, chuck it in because someone's told him it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, we were at the Rec Expo last week. I mean, it's an Aladdin's cave of fantastic kit. But you need to make sure that you have a business need for it. Really understand what's the most important things for you first. We talk about LinkedIn. LinkedIn, fantastic if you use it really well. There's a lot of discussion at the moment about how expensive LinkedIn is, especially Recruiter. But I think it's what you put into it and what you get out of it that I think is really important. We're going to talk about training. I really love the LinkedIn webinars that you do, and they change them every few weeks. And you know, I've worked with recruiters that have used LinkedIn Recruiter since day one, and they feel that they're absolute veterans. They know everything they need to know. And I'll go, just watch this on your train on the way home tonight. Just watch this video and tell me that you haven't learned something. And even if they learn something that saves them 15 minutes a day, or it allows them to have access to someone that they previously wouldn't have been able to have access to, that's a win. So yeah, just keep it simple to start with, and then as you grow, as you build, then start bolting on. Good outreach, good CRM. Make sure that things like your if you're using 365 or Gmail, make sure that everything behind the scenes is set up as well. there's been a lot of talk recently about email deliverability. There's been a lot of legislation change, a lot of system change. The likes of Google and Microsoft are now much better at identifying mass emails and
Do you know Ben Fielding?
Yes.
Yeah, he come on the podcast. We wanted to do it in person, but we had to do it remotely, and I met him at the expo. He came on and talked all about email delivery, not just like the actual outreach itself, but like the actual behind the scenes, the system stuff as well, and it was really, really interesting.
He's a very clever guy. He knows his
Email nerd,
stuff.
as he calls himself.
Email nerd. Yeah. No, he's absolutely brilliant. But they don't tell you. Nobody tells you that you've got to do this behind the scenes. You can go and buy yourself a Gmail license. You can buy yourself a Microsoft license, but you're not necessarily going to configure some of that domain, your DKIMs, your DMARCs. I'm sure we spoke about it. All of those policies and that behind the scene that actually help that email get to where it's supposed to be. A couple of years ago, it wasn't really a thing. Yeah. Now it's very much.
Yeah, I'd recommend people listening to that. I'm working with a client who do a lot of US-based recruitment, and unless you've got relationships, historically a lot of people struggle to get a lot of like phone call answers in the States. So it's you're not overly reliant on emails, but the whole idea is that they will see your message, see a CV that's been sent to them, but like, yeah, I'm interested in a call. If it's a cold call out there, like again, I'm not broadly speaking because there are some US markets that you can cold call, right? But they were quite, they were struggling a bit. And I was going to talk about LinkedIn a second because as a recruiter, emails weren't my thing. Didn't really do a lot of email spec outs. LinkedIn, I was absolutely horrendous at LinkedIn. Like I'd see my colleagues sit there until 8 p.m. at night doing LinkedIn projects. My boss would always say, like, let's see your project. And I'm like, don't have one. I was just a bit of a maverick. I just had a few candidates to the CRM and then I'd be on the phone all the time. But so obviously since getting into the world of L&D, I've had to upskill myself on that. I'm working with high performing consultants to be like, how are you so good at LinkedIn? How are you so good at emails? And what was really interesting about the podcast I did with Ben, I was like, look, I'm always looking to learn. Like selfishly, one of the reasons why I set this podcast up is to have people like yourself, Ben and others, so that I can learn and impart that knowledge onto my clients, right? And he talked to me about the hero's journey with like the email, and he was like, I've written a blog on it. So he talked about it on the podcast, sent me the blog after. I've sent that blog to my candidates, and in the coaching sessions, I'm like, right, let's see your email campaigns, and it's following that hero's journey. So it is really good. But on the LinkedIn part, as I said, I was not great at LinkedIn, to be honest. I didn't really utilize it enough. And something really interesting that I utilized 2017 now I say this to all my clients, like this is like a non-negotiable, is those saved searches, the alerts that you can get.
Yep.
And my favorite two alerts are candidates that have recently moved job because there's a potential backfill lead, and candidates that have just turned open. So you have like your Boolean search for your ideal candidate or ideal client, and then you get an alert every day or every week when they become open to opportunities. It's kind of like a job board alert, isn't it? Like read someone adds their CV to a job board. Those two things, mate, I'm so surprised how many people don't know about that.
Yeah, it's golden as well.
It's
low hanging fruit.
Literally, and I'm like, mate, not being funny, but if you weren't running your own business or whatever, and you were like, oh, my boss is a wanker, I'm sick of this fucking company, and then you turn your LinkedIn open to opportunities, you're going to get recruiters contact you, right? Yeah. Why are you not at the forefront of that? And people look at me like, oh my God, that's gold. It's not. It's really basic stuff, but not enough people know that. So how much do you do when you go into businesses with LinkedIn? Do you kind of with the system, or is that not really something that you help people with?
A lot of what I'm doing, I don't necessarily touch the LinkedIn side of things, although I can do it. A lot of it is making sure that you do have the right integrations with your CRM platforms and things like that, and you have it potentially connected to your 365 suite. Yeah. That's quite a powerful thing to do because they're owned by the same business. Microsoft and LinkedIn, they're very much in bed together. So that they're putting a lot of money into making sure that those statuses that you have in LinkedIn are produced, are visible within your Outlook environment and stuff like that, and it will capture a lot of the information about your profile just natively within Outlook now. But yeah, whilst I don't necessarily touch on that, I will quite often take people down the route, make sure you regular training, make sure you keep on top of anything that's new that's come to the market, because the recruitment company over the road that you're competing against probably won't be doing that. So you should make sure you do, so then so you've always got one up going forward.
So what is it, LinkedIn sort of integrate with some CRMs, does it?
Yep. So I mean, I'll be honest, when they first started talking about it, it was pre-GDPR. I don't know, we're going back a little while. So a lot of the integrations that you see now were actually, you know, they're almost like sort of budget versions of what they intended to be. But yeah, just, you know, you go onto a recruiter profile and you can immediately export that candidate straight into your database in a single click. It'll pull all of that information down about that person. If they've got a CV attached to their profile, it'll pull that through and parse it in directly as well. In-mail messages, I mean, this is one of the things that, you know, I think a lot of recruitment businesses struggle with, is knowing that the person sat next to you hasn't messaged that person previously. And it's very much, at the moment, it's very much down to the consultant to check when that last message was. But if you can see that in your CRM system as well as your recruiter environment, then the risk of hitting someone that's just been, you know, been got at, reduces slightly, and it helps with your outreach.
We spoke, Kalpesh and I spoke about this yesterday about the parsing technology. He was saying that when he was working at S3 many years ago, they had an entire division responsible for adding CVs to the CRM, like manually doing it. And it's just like thinking about it's mental, really, when you think that there's an entire job of people just adding things to the CRM. Whereas nowadays, like you say, it's like I used to use Bullhorn as a perm recruiter. My first job in L&D, we used Bullhorn. One click of a button, it's all on there. Okay, you still need to sense, even with like AI now, you still need to sense check stuff, right? You can't be lazy because, you know, I use Sourcewell now, and the other day saw an investor, gave him a call. It wasn't Alison, it was Steve. I was like, right, wrong number. Obviously on the CRM, it's added that incorrect number, so I've obviously got to go in and manually do it. So what I'm going to be quite interested in is, we've said we were going to talk about the training aspect. I'm sure this is probably one of the number one things that comes up when you go into businesses, the CRM adoption. As a trainer, when I go into a company and they don't have data analytics, first and foremost, it's fucking really hard, because I always use the same analogy that when I first worked with a PT before my wedding, his first question to me, before asking about what my goal was and why I wanted to put muscle mass on and stuff before my wedding, was, how are you tracking your calories and your exercise? And I had an app to track my weights and whatnot, but I didn't track my calories. And he said, it's redundant. You're not going to put muscle mass on unless you're having enough protein and enough calories. It's the exact same as a recruiter. If they're sat there, we had the example earlier, someone doing 200K that wants to do 300K. How do you actually reverse engineer that if you don't have the data to back that up? You don't have your ratios. It's not impossible, but it's finger up in the air, like, just do more, or just get better. Like, no, it needs to be really specific. But one of my biggest pet peeves is when I sit down with a consultant and I say, pull up your leads list or pull up your jobs list. They don't have a leads list. You pull up the vacancies. There's no notes on the vacancies. So I'm like, right, God forbid you get hit by a bus tomorrow, right? Your colleague is going to work this job. What have they got? If I look through my emails, they're sat there for 5 minutes looking for the job spec that the hiring manager sent them 2 months ago. I'm like, this is terrible. This is actually terrible. Now, when I worked in permanent recruitment, we had hired a sales director, and he was very militant, like to the point where he threatened us by, it sounds bad when you say it, but it worked. It's like, I'm going to dock your commission if you've added a vacancy to the system and the entire job qualification thing isn't on the front of it on Bullhorn. Don't want it in the notes. It needs to be on the front. So if you're ill or you're away or whatever, I can see that, your colleagues can see it, etc. And it worked. And you know, any single time I was about to put an offer through, my boss would just come over to me and be like, is it on the system? I'm like, it is now. And that got me into the habit. So for me, one of my biggest pet peeves is when I go into a business and they go, hey, we're a bit shit with the CRM. And I'm like, oh, it's a nightmare. So from your perspective, with like the systems training and stuff, tell me a little bit about how you help companies kind of adopt it and get those habits when it comes to utilising the CRM properly.
I think, as I said earlier, you will always have champions in your business. You will always have people that tick all the boxes, fill everything in, and and do things the right way or the way that you want. And then you also have people that do bare minimum, but sod's law, they're also top billers as well. So it's a little bit challenging. I think finding that happy medium, I think, is really important. But allowing the recruiters to understand what the benefit of them filling in these boxes is or are, versus what they're currently doing now versus what it can be. If you're holding on to candidates within your Outlook, within your inboxes, and then they're not on the system, and then I like a Friday afternoon analogy, right? So Friday afternoon, you've had a role come on from a your biggest client. They need it filled immediately. It's a nice big fee. What are you going to do? Now, most people will go out to LinkedIn and try and message as many people as they can. You're probably not going to get a lot of success on a Friday afternoon. But if you've nurtured your database or your market within your database, and you've pre-qualified your candidates, all the information's in the system as good as it can be. They know you because you're keeping in regular contact, because you're using the system for not just outreach but keeping in touch. Perhaps you've even got some automations that you set up with your IT team within the business. So even though that's not you messaging them, someone or something that looks like you is keeping in touch. When you pick up the phone on that Friday afternoon to that candidate, they know who you are, where you're from. You may have just messaged them last week and you don't even know. They know who you are, where you're from, and they're probably more likely to want to have a chat about this fantastic new role that you've just been given. It's all about reducing that time to fill, rather than going through this laborious manual, no notifications set up in Recruiter, or manually scrolling through job boards trying to find that golden egg. Use your database. That's your intellectual property at the end of the day. That's you. If you work that well, then it will pay dividends further down the line. There's going to be exceptions to the rule. There's always going to be the top biller that adds a candidate, sends a CV, interviews and places all in the same day, which skews all your stats and everything like that. We'll ignore them. But it's getting it's getting that baseline up, getting those average recruiters up to gold, getting those golds up to platinums.
Yeah, there's always that one guy, isn't there, or girl, that's the complete maverick that, you look at their stats and it's like they're all just in the red, but then they're top biller and you're like, how have you done this? They've got a vacancy on the system that says placed, but there's no interviews on the job, and you're like, what is going on here?
I like to speak to those people though. When I go into businesses, speak to your management, speak to your top billers, speak to the people that are struggling as well, but also hit that mid-range. It's important to get perspective from everyone, every walk of life within that business, to really understand how comes he's successful and he's not, and how comes he's able to not put a load of stuff on the system and he's being whipped in order to do it every week. You've got to find that medium.
Well, it's like you said, mate, it's important to get the recruiter to understand why they're doing something, because a lot of recruiters, like I'm speak for myself here, that I used to get into trouble a lot in school and in work, where someone says, right, we're rolling out this process, just do it. My first question is why? Why are we doing it? It was like, because we are.
But already if you know you're going to be asked why, and I think it's perfectly acceptable to be asked why, have an answer.
You'd like to think so, mate.
Yeah.
Some recruitment business owners don't. We're doing this because I told you to.
Yeah, I've just bought it.
So you use it. Like, why?
Take them on the journey. You might not necessarily have. When we're deploying something new to a business, it's not just about your big billers. I always find the people that are most influential, they might not necessarily be the biggest billers. They might be sort of right down the bottom of the pecking order. But if they're the most liked person around the water cooler, you can get them on board, and people listen to them within the business. They're going to help you organically with adoption as well. So get them on your pilot group. Get some senior people and get some junior people. Get some people that are probably not going to touch this product, but might be helping you administer it further down the line. Get them involved too.
That's really crucial. Like, I remember when not my last job, the job before, when I was a recruiter, it's ironic, I used to hate doing role plays. Now I'm the one facilitating the role plays, and I've created a tech that does ultimate, like, AI kind of role plays and whatnot. But I remember our operations director, Bex, said, right, there's a bit of an issue across the board around objections. So what we're going to do is we're going to dedicate half an hour during our lunch. We're going to get some whiteboards. We're going to split up into 4 groups. So you're going to write down the most common objections, and then we're going to role play them. And again, as a senior recruiter at the time, going, fuck, I've got fucking sales to do. I don't want to be doing role plays. It's a waste of time. And then she was doing the training, and I was just sat there like, oh, I'm bored. I can't be asked. And I'd like checked my emails like that. And then she perfectly, like, I get it. She called me out, and she was like, they used to call me Chucky. She was like, Chucky, you right? I was like, yeah, sorry, I was just replying to an email. She was like, oh, okay. Have you got a sec? Sorry, guys, just talk about yourself. Pulled me outside and was just like, no offense, mate, but that's actually, like, that's really fucking rude what you just done. It was like, I'm doing a training session because other people in there need help. Like, I know you're fine and you're great with objections, but you being on your phone undermines me in front of everyone. I was like, oh, I didn't, and I liked her a lot. I didn't mean to do it like that. Say, I'm sorry. And she was like, what's the matter? I just can't, I don't really want to do these role plays. Like, I'm fine. And she was like, okay, but what about Matey Boy out there? What about her out there? They're struggling and they look at you and they look up to you and they hear you on the phone. They hear how well you are about building objections. So just because you think you're good doesn't mean you can't sharpen the saw. And also, mate, you want to help other people. So by you doing the role plays is going to encourage those guys to want to do this, to want to learn, to want to improve and learn from yourself. And because she understands me, she understood that my biggest kind of thing was I wanted to help other people, right? So as soon as she tapped into that aspect of it, I was like, oh, okay. And also because I liked her, I didn't want to disrespect her, but my pre-diagnosed ADHD brain of just like, oh, I'm bored or whatever. And I was like, all right, fair enough. Shook her hand, got back in there. And then she put me on the spot and was like, right, Charles, you're going to be the recruiter. I'm going to be the client. We're going to go, speak to HR objection. I did it. You can see all the consultants making notes going, oh, I really like that question he asked, or I really like the way he showed some empathy there, And then as soon as she'd done that, it shifted, like the room shifted, because again, not to say that I was the most popular guy, I was an annoying little bugger at times, but people will kind of look at me as a decent performer in the business, bit of personality. Like if he's going to get involved, I'll get involved as well. So now as a trainer, when I go into businesses, especially when there's like a senior con joining a training session and you can see they're rolling their eyes and stuff, and I'm just like, I've been there. And
So you're my water cooler guy.
yeah.
You're the guy that I want to go and speak to.
Yeah. Because you need that, and that's why I saw a client at the start of this week, and wanted me to work largely with the trainees, and I said, well, something that I typically do is I invite the seniors and the directors into the training, not because they are going to learn necessarily anything new, especially if people have been doing it 20 years, right? They might sharpen the saw. Like the amount of times I've had a senior in training with me, and they go, I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. I'll do that now. Great. But the most important thing is getting them to refine their skill and doing what they do and seeing the trainees look at the person with 15, 20 years experience and going, oh, and also because I go into, similar to yourself, so many different types of agencies, construction, life sciences, tech, etc. I don't know the market, right? So yes, I can give you the objection handling process for speak to HR or get through a gatekeeper, but I don't know the terminology when it comes to Rust and Golang or, design and build construction. So that's why I have that senior person in, because they can use the process that I've kind of gone through with a bit of that market knowledge twinge on it. Do you know what I mean?
Make it relevant.
Yeah.
Make it relevant.
Yeah.
It's all about taking them on the journey, making them understand what's the objective, what's the goal. But do you know what? One thing I do always say is don't be afraid to change the model. You can roll out something new and it might be absolutely brilliant, but you might find 2, 3, 4 months down the line that you might need to tweak it slightly or change your approach because you might have done so well at deploying it. Now, actually, we need to take it to the next level. Let's up our game a little bit. Or perhaps it might not have gone the way that we hoped. Perhaps the evaluation of the business might not have been completely correct. The market's changed. There might be some personnel changes within the business that has quite a big effect on these rollouts. So don't be afraid to tweak that model. So when you do that continuous training, and if you do have to tweak that, don't be afraid to. You don't have to use the same model year in, year out.
Yeah.
Keep it relevant.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I've been speaking a lot about that, especially with what's happening with AI now. You're seeing a lot of businesses that are falling behind. They need to adapt. They need to embrace as well. Like, mate, 2 years ago, I was one of those people with a pitchfork going like, don't want anything to do with AI, and then shortly there realised that fucking hell, I'm wasting a lot of time here by not utilising it, and I've started to learn how to prompt, started to learn how to vibe code, like really trying to embrace it, but equally upskilling the human stuff, because that for me is like my whole belief around the AI boom at the minute is that the good recruiters, the people with those good interpersonal human skills, the people that get in front of someone, act like a chameleon, get to know them, that's not going to get replaced. But it's the laborious administrative tasks that back when I was a recruiter, manually doing out specific emails and stuff like that, or all the other type of admin stuff that you don't need to do anymore, right? Manually like editing a CV where I can just pass it into an AI now, like things like that, just mega. But mate, the simple, like we talked a little bit about tech stack recently. I had a meeting with a bunch of recruiters at the start of the week, and I said, "Oh, just bear with me 2 seconds and put my note taker on." And one of the consultants went, "What's a note taker?" And I was like, "Ooh." You don't know what a note taker is? They're like, no, can you explain it? I went, so basically, I showed them it. It's free. I use Granola, right? It's completely free. I mean, I can upgrade if I want. But it basically just listens into our chat, and then it can give me a breakdown of what we've spoken about. So if I miss anything, then, you know, it just picks up everything in the background. You could just see their mind blown, like, that's a thing? I'm like, yeah.
I think note takers are really interesting because they did just, I mean, not so long ago, they did just start life as a note taker, and you just get a full transcript. You might not even know who had said what, but it was just a great big document of a whole load of words. And now you can get them pushed into your CRM system. Absolutely brilliant. You can get them summarized, so you get your action points and everything like that now. But where I see the benefit of note takers is that candidate qualification piece.
Yeah.
A really good example we had the other day. We were speaking to a recruiter was speaking to a candidate, but they were speaking about a very specific role, and you might relate to this. So I've got a role on the system, and I'm talking to you about a very particular role because your CV says you've got this skill set. What then transpired is when he's on the phone to this person, they had a whole other skill set that wasn't included in their CV, but actually came about during the conversation. The note taker transcribed that information, took it into the CRM system, and now that became searchable. Now, that particular candidate didn't get that job in that particular space, but a few weeks later, it wasn't in their CV. We ran a search in the database for the particular spec. That candidate popped up. It wasn't in his CV, but the transcriptor had picked up this information. He had this skill set, got the job.
Wow.
And because he'd narrowed down his CV just to apply for that very particular role, thinking that was the way to go, he didn't get the job, unfortunately, but he ended up with a different role because of a conversation that he had and the note taker picked up. That's what AI should be about.
Yeah.
That's what, because you'll go out to market or you'll get a job on, and your focus is to fill that role. You're not thinking about 2, 3, 4 roles down the line, but your conversation with that candidate in this instance has taken us down a path that we never thought would ever happen. That's where AI is really powerful.
Yeah.
You know, and we didn't even know at the time that it captured that information. So
yeah, that type of stuff is power. Yeah. Like I said this to Cal Peshin, and I've probably mentioned this a dozen times on the podcast already, that my coaching sessions I've only been really using the note takers for probably 9 months now, probably. We're just all from memory. Do you know what I mean? So I'm like having a coaching session, and what I hate, and I've worked with a few trainers, a few coaches, the best coaches I've worked with are really locked in. They're looking at your body language, and you then go, how does it make you feel? And then if you're like this, they're like, I'm noticing from your body language that makes you feel uneasy. When you see people that are making notes going, like that, they're not really paying attention to the whole thing. So for me, I'm like, I want to be as I'm trying to think of the right word here, but like really
in the room
with someone.
Yeah.
Like there, my old NLP trainer would say, you can be there or you can be there.
Yeah.
Like, or here. Like you're actually here. And that for me is a big thing. But what I would do is by the end of the day, then I'd manually type up all of my coaching reports, and I'd have like a few bullet points from the coaching sessions and go, right, what did they say? What were the numbers there? Pretty sure it was that. I'll text them quickly. Whereas now I'm doing that, and then I've also got the note taker. So there'll be things there that have popped up. And sometimes, and again, Calpesh said this to me yesterday, was just like, but are you still manually going through each AI report that's generated from your note? Yeah, 100%. Because the amount of times where like the first 5 minutes of like the rapport building, how was the weekend type of stuff, and the AI note taker comes up and says, Charles has recently had a challenge with his sleep with his baby. I'm like, get rid. Don't need that.
You mean that's not relevant?
Yeah. It's like, this is about the consultant, not me. But yeah, so that's interesting.
And you go through a lot less notepads as well. When I first started my business, I wanted to get as much information from the people that I was speaking to as possible. And you're a lot younger than me, but my camera on my home setup is quite high. So I was scribbling notes, and I realised in my call recordings that the poor sods on the other end of the call were just seeing the bulb patch on the top of my head while I was frantically trying to get these notes down. And then afterwards, I wasn't able to really understand what I'd written down, and I never thought that I'd got all the detail. Now we just sit there and we have a proper conversation. It's more in depth. We get a lot more detail out of that. It summarises at the end. I have all my action points. I can send a copy of those actions back to the person I'm speaking with as well. They haven't had to endure the top of my head. And I'm saving the planet because I'm not going through 3,000 notebooks a month.
Mate, that's another little pet peeve of mine. When I first moved from contract to perm recruitment back in 2016, my habit, like a lot of recruiters, was you're on the phone and you're scribbling your notes like that and you can barely read them. And it wasn't until one day the managing director, whilst I was in the middle of a client call, good client call, pulled up my diary and threw it in the bin. And I just looked at him and I was like, oh my God, press the mute button on the landline. It's one of them ones, you don't have headsets yet. So you're like, what the fuck are you doing? Like that. And he was just like, mate, stop fucking writing your notes. Type. And I was like, all distracted. I'm like, sorry, Mr. Candidate or client. Oh, like that. Got off the call and I was like, mate, what the fuck? You threw me off the call. And he went, mate, you spend an hour a day typing your notes onto the system. It's a waste of time. If you want to be a high performer, fucking learn to type on the phone so that hour at the end of the day you can do for revenue generating activities. So yeah, but I can't type fast. That's a fixed mindset. I'm like, oh, it's always a fixed mindset with you guys. I was like, I just can't. He went, yeah, you can't yet, but you can learn. And then that rule that we implemented was sit, type, listen, stand, talk, sell. And I was like, okay. So I would always say to candidates when I was learning to type, because again, I didn't know how to type. Now I'm just typing without looking, right? But when you first start, it's like any habit. I'd always say to the candidate or client, just bear with, if I go silent for a few seconds, I'm just making notes and I'm a bit of a slow typer. Everyone totally understood. Now it's got to a point where I'm talking with someone, I can make notes without looking at the keyboard. I go into so many recruitment businesses and I'm like, so talk me through your leads, talk me through your pipeline. Right, let me open up. What day was that? I'm like, what the fuck are we doing here? And like, also writing in comparison to typing, it's so much slower. So if you're thinking about little like 1% tips on like high performance and stuff, like we even went super in detail with like, because again, we were on landlines, is the fraction of a time it takes for you to dial out that amount of time if you're making 100 dials a day and stuff. Like, there's so many little high performance hacks. So yeah, for me, like, yeah, if you can just type up your notes and you've got an AI note taker, that saves you so much time.
Yeah, and that is a quick win. It helps you tick that AI box within your business.
Yeah.
It's easy to implement. It's easy to manage, and it saves you stacks of time.
100%.
Stacks of
Have you worked with any businesses that don't have like that still just use landlines? They don't have like a VoIP.
Yeah. I won't mention any names, but yeah, there are businesses out there that are still very, very traditional in that respect. They need to be careful. They need to be careful because other people, competitors, are doing it in a lot more efficient way.
Yeah.
I think there's that fear of change. There's two types of business leaders that I work with. You've got the business leader that goes out and buys everything, and then you've got the other business leader that's nervous about buying something. We're looking at SaaS-based models, so if you get it wrong, you're potentially looking down the barrel of a 12, 24-month contract that you're going to have to suffer. And I think fear comes in to a lot. They don't want to upset the business as well. Typically they're smaller businesses. So and so's worked with me for years. She's the best person that we've ever had in the business, but she does things in her own particular way. If we brought in mobile phones, for example, or we brought in a VoIP system, that would upset her. Fine. What about the other 15 people in the business then?
Yeah.
Let her be her if that's what you want. But you've got to get with it.
Not 100%.
And what happens at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock when they walk out the door? What happens to your calls then?
Yeah. Because when we developed the MVP for Milo, which I'll show you after this, and I spoke to a company that I'm quite close with, and told them about it, and they were like, that sounds amazing, that could really help our consultants. Why don't you come into the office and do a demo to me and the CEO? I was like, yeah, amazing. So how does it actually work? And I was like, so basically, we've engineered it so that it just picks up on computer audio. So the minute your microphone is activated and the candidate or client answers the phone, Milo listens in and it can transcribe the call, but just listening to how you're saying like things as well. So it's not just purely a transcript, but
Sentiment.
tonality and things like that. So it's really interesting. I'm like, oh, great. So do you have to have a VoIP then? I was like, well, yeah. Like most companies have a VoIP now. Which one do you use? They're like, oh, we don't. I was like, oh, how do you make calls then? I was like, we just have a landline. Oh, like, let me call my engineer quick. Called the engineer and went, no, I don't think we can, I don't think that's possible. And B, is like, how many companies are actually just still using landlines? I was like, mate, it's the first one I've spoken to that only use landline for 4 or 5 years now. Like, I can't remember the last time that's happened. So I called them back and I was like, look, I don't think that what we offer is actually going to help you guys unless you do a lot of your calls on Google Meet, Teams, Zoom, etc. Then fine. But if you're very much a phone-based company, then unfortunately our product's not going to help you. So they're like, oh, okay, we'll park it. And I spoke to someone that knows that business, and he's like, yeah, I've told them that they're going to fall behind, unfortunately.
And you'll find that the landline's probably owned by their landlord. So they're in like a Regis office and they don't actually own the numbers, they just rent it. So you can't even port it over. If you go, right, we're going to get a VoIP system in, you don't actually have ownership of the number to move it over as well, which is worrying. But again, it comes back to you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. So, yeah, that's why I've set up my business, to help companies on that journey. You might have thought about getting rid of your landlines for years, but that fear of what it means to the business by potentially losing those numbers or having them ported over, what's the impact of downtime as you transfer that over, that's what I think a lot of people get caught, they get stuck.
Yeah, it makes sense. Before we wrap up then and get to my final question, one question before that, what are you seeing from some of the best recruitment businesses or companies you're currently working with when it comes to their systems, their training and stuff? Like, what are the maybe top 2 to 3 things that these recruitment businesses are doing to be high performing?
Using their data, really having a good strategy and a really good idea about where they want to take their data. It might not be there yet, but if they've got a really good idea and a clear understanding of where they want to get to, that sets them apart. Because once you've got that good data in the system, everything else actually falls in quite nicely around the outside, whether it be automation, AI. Because you might not have an AI tool today that scans your system for. A good example is you can add a candidate to the system and it will automatically attach that candidate to a job, for example. If you don't have that data in the system, then it can't do that. You might not have that system now, that feature now, but in the future, in a few months' time when you buy that thing, you've already got some brilliant data. So as soon as you plug it in, it goes from day one. So yeah, data's really important. I said earlier about not being afraid to change the direction of the ship. If your market changes, so obviously there's a lot going on in the world at the moment.
Just a bit.
Yeah. So we might have to reevaluate how we approach things. Be ready. Really understand what the future could look like, and what do you need to potentially put in place in order to shift direction. It might be new hires, it might be new technology. It could be on a number of new offices, less offices, that kind of thing. But, be ready. You might not ever have to implement what you're thinking about, but just be there.
Yeah, love it. So final question, as you probably know, following this particular episode, how can people get 1% better in recruitment?
I've really just answered it. Be decent with your data. Don't be afraid to have those conversations with your consultants. If they're not putting stuff in the system, it's going to impact you all. You can buy data, but nothing is better than the questions that the consultant are asking, and putting the information that's relevant to you and your business in the system. It's your intellectual property at the end of the day. That is your business. Make it good.
Love it. Awesome, man. Well, look, I really appreciate you making the time to come here to do the podcast. I put all the details of your LinkedIn, etc., below this episode. In terms of what types of people, if people listen to this and go, yeah, this sounds interesting, what types of people should reach out to you, and what's the best way to get in touch with you?
If you're a recruitment business leader and you're looking for something different, or if you just want to chat, I offer free 30-minute consultation calls. They're most successful with a lot of people, and they're not about me trying to sell you something. Quite often I spend a lot of time asking questions that other people haven't asked recruitment leaders, and they go, oh yeah, and then they'll then go off and think about it. I had a guy the other day come back to me, and they're not a customer. They took one of my 30-minute calls. They probably will be a customer soon if you're watching. They're not a customer yet, but they went, oh, Rich, we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago. I've made a couple of changes and this is what we've done. And it was all really positive because we're going to implement that now. Whenever anyone joins the business, this is the first thing we're going to do with them. And he gave me a list and I was like, absolutely chuffed. And that's why I set up my business, because I love seeing people successful off of either a small change or something I've shown them or something we've implemented. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, likewise, mate. Awesome. Well, once again, thank you very much for coming, and for people that made it this far, I'll see you next week.
Thanks so much for watching or listening. Make sure that you are liking, commenting and subscribing / following the show, whatever platform it is that you are watching / listening to this on. Also make sure that you follow me on TikTok so that you don't miss out on some clips. The monthly newsletter gives you a roundup of the episodes that happened in that month with some actionable takeaways for you guys. It's going to help you get 1% better in recruitment. I would love for you to comment or message me what your biggest takeaway is from this episode. And if you or someone that you know is interested in coming on the show, as you can see, we have had such a broad variety of people that have come on the show, all in the aim to get you guys 1% better in recruitment. So if you want to help support me with the show, make sure that you're getting people in touch with me, and also just reach out to me as well around the recruitment coaching training piece. That's ultimately how I fund this podcast, right? But loving doing this. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Can't do it without people that watch and listen to this podcast. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.